Today, I'm going to talk about the 5 things that I think the 49ers should do prior to the NFL draft to set us up so we can strictly go best player available and set us up really nicely for Trey Lance's first year as the starting quarterback for our San Francisco 49ers. The first order of business is going to be the most obvious one, and that is we really do have to trade Jimmy Garoppolo for multiple reasons. Number one, the cap hit, $25 million. That could allow us to maybe immediately look at the extensions for guys like Bosa and Debo. That could also look at us maybe some other free agents, and there are still a lot of good ones out there so we can improve the team in 2022. But not only that, and maybe actually more important you could argue, is that it would officially usher in the Trey Lance era. The longer Garoppolo hangs around, it's just going to leave questions maybe about Trey, maybe the Niners are having second thoughts, all this stuff that we just really don't want to have. Now, look, I love Jimmy Garoppolo, and so me saying got to get rid of him is not trying to disrespect him. He did a lot for the franchise. I've been a big supporter, so let me say that. But I think we just have to call up the Colts and say, look, give us your 3rd round pick this year. Give us a 4th round pick next year. But if Jimmy plays, let's say, 12 games, and then if you guys make the playoffs, then that bumps up to like a 3rd or a 2nd round pick, something like that. That way the Colts, should they be successful in 2022, and Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, both of them do need to be successful, because Jim Irsay, the owner there, he ain't going to put up for no more crap there. Like, he wants to win. They have a roster that can win. Simple as that. So I think they bring in a winner like Jimmy Garoppolo. Of course, the other option out there for a trade that could immediately start is a Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield hasn't proven he can win anything. So to me, they bring in Garoppolo. They still have, 2 2nd-round picks. They still have a bunch of picks that they can use to improve the roster now. Maybe they even draft a quarterback like a Sam Howell, like a Desmond Ridder, or if Matt Corral falls, you never know. So they also have a guy that they can develop long term. But I think trade Garoppolo. Let's get that done. Let's move on. Let's add some free agents, and let's officially get the Trey Lance era going in San Francisco. The second thing that I would like to do sooner rather than later is actually going to be extending Samson Ebukam. Now, Ebukam actually carries with him a pretty large cap hit this year. It's about $8.5 million. So I would like to extend him. Let's maybe spread that money. So maybe it's $4 million. We can restructure it, however that works. I'm not a cap guru, but I know there's ways we can do that. And according to Over the Cap, we can actually save $4 million on the cap this year should we extend him. He's still very young. He's only 27 years old, so I would even be okay with giving him a 2-year extension on top of this year, so he's here till he's 30. And when we look at Ebukam, he's someone who really, really came on later in the year. 5.5 sacks in the last 8 games when you include the 3 playoff games. So that's really, really solid production right there. If you extrapolate the numbers for that maybe over a typical regular season, we're talking double-digit sack numbers, which at maybe $5-6 million a year, that is really, really good. We know he's an excellent scheme fit. Here's one of my favorite things too, and I've mentioned this in other videos, is what I really like about Ebukam is he doesn't miss games. He's played in every single game in his career, and I believe he's been in the NFL for 5 years. I think he's a 5-year veteran. Never missed a game, so you can feel comfortable paying him that money, keeping him on a 2 or 3 year deal. I like Ebukam a lot, and he really has, and I think he has the potential to get even better and basically fill in somewhat of that D Ford role that we were very much looking for in this defense. After we've made those first 2 moves, they actually combined would free up almost $30 million on our cap, which is awesome. Now, here's the thing. We get some draft capital back from the Garoppolo trade. Ebukam is then extended, so we know he's around for a while, and he's someone who's just really improved as the season went on under the guidance of Chris Kasurik, playing beside our very talented defensive line. So now we want to bring in some guys. JC Tretter is the first guy that I would like to bring in once those two moves are done. He's an 8-year veteran. He's 6'4", 307, primarily has played center in his career, but has also played some left guard. So he's 31. Here's what I really like about JC Tretter. He's only missed one game in the last 5 seasons with the Browns. I did also look into some of the advanced stats with JC Tretter, and he averages about 2 penalties a season, which is something that, like, sign me up for that. Like, we saw even guys like Laken Tomlinson, especially towards the end of the year, really start to pick up those holding calls. We know Trent Williams has been called for a number of false starts, holdings, things like that. So for JC Tretter to average 2 penalties a season for the last 5 years, sign me up for that. That sounds really good. I think initially, if we signed him, I would actually be absolutely okay with maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. 2022, if Alex Mack returns, then JC Tretter would be our left guard. We have that very good, talented left side of the line and a very much a veteran left side of the line, which I think would actually help out Trey Lance significantly. And then Alex Mack, let's say he retires after this coming season, you move JC Tretter over to center for a year or two. He's got a lot of experience. Maybe we draft a later pick center, maybe next draft, and we can develop him behind Tretter. But I think with the previous moves being made, we'd have the money to do it. I think it would give us a really, really solid offensive line and allow us, and the big thing which my whole video is about, is allow us to just go the best player available in the draft. So yeah, JC Tretter, 3-year deal. Let's make it happen, Lynch. While we're on the topic of spending some money, I would like to bring back a familiar face, and that is my guy, the EDGE Arden Key. I'm a huge fan of Arden Key and what he did with the 49ers this season. He's another guy like Ebukam who really, really came on as the season went along. I think the guidance under Kasorg, playing in this DeMeco Ryans defense, playing beside a bunch of talented guys, really just allowed him to, like, not maximize his potential, because I think he has the potential to be a lot better than even what he was last year, but it really allowed him to flourish and really allowed him to develop into a very quality player in the NFL. Now he's 6'5", 240, he's got excellent size, excellent length for what we're looking for in this defense. 6.5 sacks last year, 17 quarterback hits, both career highs by far. So I think another offseason with Kasorg, with DeMeco Ryans, playing beside and learning from even guys like his peers like Bosa and what have you, this could really, really help out a guy like Arden Key to improve even more. What I really liked about Arden Key, and it's something that I did mention a number of times in the streams, is that he actually had at one point, the last 10 games of the regular season, 8 out of the last 10 games, he had either a sack or a half sack. So that was just not like, and I'm not saying that Key is as good as Chandler Jones, but like Chandler Jones had like 5 or 6 sacks in week 1, and then it was somewhat sporadic the remaining weeks. Whereas Key, for the last 10 weeks of the season, was consistently getting pressure and consistently got home and actually made some plays. So I think we bring him on a 2 or 3 year deal. He's only 26 years old, so he's got a number of years ahead of him with really good football. I think he could potentially, and it might actually work out in his favor, if he comes back for 2 years, then he'll be 28 years old, and then he'll hit free agency, and he could make crazy money. If he has a couple more good years in San Francisco, it makes sense for both parties. And it really, again, even though this is a very deep edge class in the draft, supposedly anyways, I think this would maybe allow us to address other positions and players who actually might end up falling in the draft. So overall, I think this would be a really solid move, and it would just give us that really dynamic rotation at edge rusher, which is just so important when we play in a division with the Rams and with the Cardinals. So yeah, bring back Arden Key. He is going to be a really, really good player moving forward, and I don't just want to let him walk for on a cheaper deal. The last thing that I think that we need to do before the NFL draft to set us up so we can go best player available, that we can set Trey Lance up for success in his first year as the full-time starter, and that is adding another weapon, someone who would really just complement all the other receivers that we have in the wide receiver room, and that is going to be signing someone who I've talked about before on this channel, MVS Marquez Valdes-Scantling, from formerly of the Green Bay Packers. So let's talk about him a little bit. He's 6'4", 206, great size. 4.3 740, lightning quick. That's something that our receivers really don't have. Debo is pretty darn quick. I think he ran in the 4.4s, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling 4.3 speed, take the top off defenses and really allow us to open things up underneath for Kittle, for Debo, for Ayuk, even for Jawan Jennings, who's quickly emerging as well. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS, he's only 27 years old, so I think we could very much realistically bring him in on a 2-year deal. Now, I think he actually might come at a relatively hefty price, which I would be actually okay with on a 2-year deal. And I think that would work out for both parties. For MVS's side, he would be 29 when he hits free agency again, and then he would also be with a team like the 49ers who are looking to compete for Super Bowls the next couple of years. But him being 29 when he hits free agency again would have a chance for another big contract with another team. I think, when it comes to the scheme that he'll be playing in San Francisco, and this is why it would work out for us, is that he could step in immediately and be very familiar with the scheme that we run. What I love about him are a couple of other things too. He's only missed 6 career games in 4 years, which is awesome to have. They actually all came in 2021, but he's only missed 6 games, so that's really, really good, really consistent. You can rely on him to be out there. 0 drops in 2021, so that's awesome, reliable hands. The other thing too, talking about reliable hands, only 1 career fumble in 131 career touches, so that's just awesome to see. He doesn't fumble the ball much at all, so really, really reliable all across the board. He's consistently put up solid numbers, and just if you look at his numbers, they're just bam, like 400, 500, 600 yards each year. What I do look at too, and this actually just demonstrates how good of a deep threat he is that I believe it was in 2020, he had over 20 yards per catch, which is wild. Led the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Last year, over 17 yards per catch. So when you think about it, how he could complement the other receivers that we have, and also take advantage of Trey Lance's arm. This 49ers offense is going to look different than what we've been used to with Garoppolo. This could look a little bit more similar, but I think much better than we had with CJ Beathard. Beathard had a pretty decent arm, so I think Trey Lance is really going to air it out a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more deep passes. Having a guy like MVS come into the team after making the other moves that I've talked about, we'd have the cap space, and then again, it doesn't force us to have to draft a receiver, a speedy receiver early. It could allow us to maybe draft a receiver later on in the draft who we could develop and bring along in a couple of years. So I think he'd be a fantastic addition to our San Francisco 49ers, and I think we need to make it happen. That is my video of the 5 things that I think we need to make happen before the NFL draft, and that would just set us up so nicely. And I've mentioned it a number of times in this video, but it really would allow us to essentially just go best player available throughout the rest of the draft. Now, other moves that I'd be very quickly that I would be okay with would be bringing back K'Wan Williams, bringing back Jaquiski Tartt, maybe even Jason Verrett on like very 1-year deals, essentially vet minimum deals, to allow that flexibility where we can just draft the best guy. And depending on how the draft all shakes out, we could maybe hold on to them, we could cut them, we can see if they can battle it out in, training camp and preseason, things of that nature. But I think the 49ers with these moves will be in a great position heading into the new year. And let me know what you guys think about the moves that I've suggested. I would love to hear some suggestions from what you guys have. And at this point, I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.